Welcome to J&J Acres. Today we're going to be installing an automatic watering system for our rabbits. Here are the materials we'll be using, and you'll see what each one of them is for as we go through the project. Now there are a lot of different automatic watering systems. This one that we're using is called the Edstrom automatic watering system. And there are several ways that it can be installed. One uses a bucket or standing water source that's gravity fed so that you have a low amount of water pressure. We want to make sure that we don't have to add water to the system unless some extenuating circumstance presents itself. So we're actually attaching this to a municipal water source and using a pressure reducer to control the amount of pressure that's going through the system. So the first components that we'll be using are a four-way splitter, so that we're going to use automatic watering system for our rabbits and also one for our goats. And we want to have a hose bib so that we can get water easily from this location, and then I'm sure we'll find a use for the fourth one at some future point. This is the filtration system. It works very simply by passing water through a small micron filter inside. Looks just like a screen. You can see it there. The water goes in through the middle, and the exit point is on the outside, so the only way for the water to get there is to pass through the screen. The reason we do this is because the rest of the system is pretty sensitive to any exterior debris. So rather than risk any damage to the system, we'll put it through this filter first, and we can clean it through this port, which I'll explain a little bit more later. This is our pressure reducer. It's going to take us down from municipal PSI, which is about 60, down to only 1 through 10 is what this will allow us to operate within. That's an awful hefty reduction in pressure, but the system needs to operate at about a 1 to 3 PSI, so it's very important. On here you'll see several brass fittings that take us from the 3/4 female that's a part of the reducer down to a 3/16 inch barb for the hose that we'll use as the transmission line throughout the rabbitry. Now this system actually was supposed to come with a barb, and it was just a human error. They're sending me a new one in the mail, but until then I didn't want to wait, so I bought the fittings to do the reduction, just found at the local box hardware store. And to make sure that we're doing everything just the way we expect it to, since the pressure reducer will take us anywhere from 1 to 10 PSI, but I need to stay below 3, we have a pressure gauge so that we can make sure that what's coming out of the reducer is the operating range that we want to be in. The reason I've decided to mount the system to this location is for ease of access. We plan in the future to have enough rabbit cages that going down this wall there'll be some just like you see in the other wall later in the video. So I want to have it easily accessible so that I can flush out the filter and do any other maintenance that I might need to in the future. So take that into consideration where you're putting this. You may need to extend your water input to a different location so that it's easier to get to for maintenance later. I'm just using these self-tapping metal screws, and I'm going to fill up all of the holes that I can on this splitter to make sure that it's as stable as possible. When I was trying to figure out how I was going to install the regulator or how I was going to mount it, I knew I wanted to mount it because it's got a little bit of weight to it, and I didn't want it to just be supported by pipe on either end, and I didn't want it to be on the ground or some other surface. So when I received it, I noticed that there was a groove here with 2 holes on the other side, which is just going into the molded plastic here. And it looked immediately like what this was for a conduit brace, if you will. And when I took this to the store to double check these fittings, I realized that's exactly what it was. A conduit would fit directly in there, and the brace and the holes line up perfectly. But that wasn't really going to work for my situation, so as I thought about it, I decided I was going to use this corner brace. And the holes line up just close enough that I'll be able to put this corner brace on top of here and then mount it onto the beam like this. So I'm going to do this part next, and then we'll connect the rest of them. Again, I'm just using these self-tapping screws. If you're not familiar with it, they have a bit of a drill cut that's sharpened a bit on the end so that it can cut through the metal, and then when it gets up to the threads, it'll bite onto the beam. Just go slow, because as soon as you make it through the metal and the thread catches, all the pressure you've been exerting to try to make sure that the cut takes place, it's going to zip that screw straight in, and you don't want to over tighten it. Also, while I'm speaking, I used a size 14 3/4 inch screw here. I mention that just to say to be careful, because you don't want to go through the molding, and you also need to make sure that you actually bite into the side of the hole. So that's why I selected that size for the screw here. So far everything's going well. Let's finish it up. The next thing I'm going to do is install the filter. The filter comes with several different adapters. It comes with one to take you from the normal male pipe fitting to a hose fitting. It also has a coupler so that you can attach a male end to the male end that's already part of the plastic housing. It also comes with the on-off switch or valve at the bottom of it where we can flush the system out. It will be mounted. Be careful to look for the arrow for the direction of flow for the water. And mine will be mounted directly to the pressure reducer, just like this. You'll see that my clean out valve is pointing away so that I can have easy access to it. And also I don't have to worry about any other mounting techniques for this. It can sit right there alone by itself. Alright, so we just had a little lesson learned. Because I mounted the pressure reducer on first, I wasn't able to actually spin this on top of the connection here. So you'll need to mount the filter to the pressure reducer before you mount it onto the bracket. Next, we're going to put the pressure gauge onto the pressure reducer. So the next thing I need to do is connect the splitter to the filter. This can be done in many different ways, but I decided I wanted to have a little bit of leeway rather than make that a fixed connection. So I knew I had a broken piece of hose at the house, so I went to the store and I bought a repair section with another another female end, so that I could connect these two male ends together. So I'm going to measure this, cut it, repair it, and use it as my way to get from the splitter to the filter. If you haven't used a repair kit for a hose before, it works real simple. It's going to come in two pieces, a clamp, if you will, and then the adapter itself. Put the clamp over the hose, put the barb side of the adapter into the hose. It should be a tight fit. Bring the clamp back up to the top of the hose, and then just use a Phillips screwdriver to bring this down. Now, if you need to go buy one of these, if you're going to do this exactly the same way or whatever the case may be particular about what you buy. They do have different connectors. Some are meant to fit different sized hoses. Some are only for a specific size hose. So be careful about which one you buy. You don't want to have to make another trip for your $1.50 connector.